Hi, and welcome back. Today, what we're going to look at is square numbers and cube numbers, and we might even touch on the square root of numbers. Now, you probably know a bit about this, but I want to explain why they're called square numbers and how it all works. A square number is the number you get when you multiply a number by itself. So when you see these numbers, see at the top how you see these numbers here, it says 4, and there's a little 2, and a 6, and a little 2, and 11, and a little 2. Sometimes people think that means you times the number by 2, but a little 2 means it's 4 squared or 6 squared or 11 squared. And what that little 2 means is you need to times it by itself. So 4 squared becomes 4 times 4, 6 squared becomes 6 times 6, and 11 squared with a 2 becomes 11 times 11. For example, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so if we wrote 2 squared, the answer would be 4. If we wrote 5 squared, you do 5 times 5, which is 25. All right. Now I'll look at why we call them square numbers. So we call them square numbers because if you had 2 squared, it would be a square that has 2 by 2. Okay, because it's got to make a square. It's how many lines across and how many squares up. That's why we call it squared. So 2 squared would be 2 across and 2 up, which is 4. 1 squared is just 1 because it's only 1, right? 3 squared is 3 across and 3 up, which would be 9 squares altogether if you made a square that had 3 across and 3 up. Same as 4, if you had a 4 across and 4 up, it would be 16. Okay, so you can see that by making a number square, you're saying if it was a square that was 4 by 4, how many would be in there altogether? You just times it by itself. Same as 7. Okay, so 7 across, 7 up, 49. Perfect. Same as this one. If it's 6 across and 6 up, then we write 6 squared, which is equals 36, right? And we write it like this, with the 6 and a little 2 above it. Okay, so remember that 2 means squared. It means it times by itself. Okay. Now, what sometimes gets confused is that 6 times 6 is 36, right? So this square here is 6 across and 6 up, 36. Now, when someone asks you the square root, okay, what they mean is if you took a square and it had 36 in all of it, how many would each side be? Okay, so when someone asks you the square root, they're saying to you, if the whole square had this many in it, how many would be on each side? All right, so to do that, you basically know you actually have to do in your head. So if you saw 36, square root of 36, you would say, which number times by itself would equal to 36? 6. So the square root is basically trying to figure out which number would you need to times by itself to get that big number. We'll come back to that next time. We're just focusing on square numbers today. So 4 times 4 is the same as 4 squared. You just times it by itself. Okay, like that one there. So 4 times 4 squared is 16. And also the square root of 16 is also 4. Remember, don't get too confused with square root. We're going to come back to it. So once again, similar sorts of things. This 10 squared is 10 times by 10 equals 100. And it keeps going, keeps going. Now it can be like 14. If it was 14 squared, it'd be 14 times 14. Okay, so that's squared numbers, right? But sometimes you'll see the 10, and on top of the 10, you'll see a little 3. What that 3 means is 10 cubed. Okay, so the 3 means cubed. So what you need to do with the 10 cubed is you need to think about the fact that it would be like, see a number like 3 cubed here, right? So 3 cubed means 3 down, 3 across, and also 3 wide. It's a cube that's made by 3, 3, and 3. Same as 2 cubed here, means 2 across, 2 up, and 2 deep. 1 cubed is still going to be 1, right? So what you need to do with cubed numbers is you need to do 3 times 3 times 3. So that little 3 above it, if it's a 2, we just times it by itself. But if it's a 3, we have to times by it. We have to do 3 times 3 times 3. Or if it's a 5, we do 5 times 5 times 5. We need to times it by itself 3 times. So 5 times 5 is 25. And 25 times 5 is 125. Okay. So when you're cubing numbers, you times it by itself 3 times. For example here, ready? So 1 cubed is 1 times 1 times 1, still 1. 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. And it goes on all the way. You can see that cube numbers, when they start getting like a little bit bigger, can get really quite confusing. And that's okay. We're not going to go that hard for you guys. We're going to sort of make it at your level. But If you see a 4 and then a cubed up top with a little 3, it means you times it by itself 3 times. So 4 times 4 times 4. Now, this number can be working for those of you who want to go further. Whatever the number up in the top, that's how many times it times by itself. So if you had like a 2 and above it in the little one was like a 6, right? That would be 2 to the power of 6, and you would times by itself 6 times. So whatever number, little number is up the top, that's how many times you times the number by itself. Okay, so that's cubed numbers there, and I'm pretty sure that's it. So remember, squared numbers is when you see a little 2 above it, and it's like saying if you had to make a square that was that far across and that far up, what would the answer be? Okay, and with cube numbers, it's like you had to make it into a cube. So it's that many high, that many across, and that many deep. So you have to times it by itself 3 times. Okay, the numbers get quite big with cube numbers, but I hope that's helped. We're going to come back to square root numbers soon. And maybe next lesson we'll go on to square root of numbers. So you don't have to worry about that for today. But I hope that's helped you with squared numbers and cubed numbers, because there's going to be some. We're going to make maybe 2 sheets, and one's going to be easier and one's going to be harder. Okay. I hope that lesson's been okay, and thanks for watching.